The transport shuttle lurched as it entered the gravitational field of Station Omega 7, causing several of the alien cadets to steady themselves against the reinforced walls. Maya-chan remained perfectly still in her seat, her small frame barely filling the regulation harness designed for beings twice her size. Around her, the other new arrivals whispered in various languages and communication methods, their excitement palpable despite the different species represented. The Galactic Military Academy was the most prestigious institution in known space, accepting only the finest candidates from hundreds of worlds. Maya had seen the statistics during her preparation. Out of nearly 10 million applicants across the galaxy, only 5,000 were selected each cycle. She was the only human. A massive Krillian seated across from her let out what passed for a chuckle among his kind, a sound like grinding stone. His 4 arms were each thicker than Maya's entire torso, and his exoskeleton gleamed with the blue-black sheen that marked him as a warrior caste member. "Look at the little human," he rumbled to his companion, another Krillian with similar proportions. How did something so fragile even pass the preliminary tests? Maya kept her eyes fixed on the viewport, watching as the Academy's enormous structure grew larger. The station was a marvel of engineering, a rotating cylinder nearly 50 kilometers long with multiple rings and docking bays that could accommodate vessels from a dozen different species. She had studied its blueprints during the 6-month journey from Earth, memorizing every detail. The Krillian's companion, whose name tag read, "Facts More," leaned forward. "Perhaps the humans have different testing standards. Their species only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. Surely they don't expect her to compete with those of us from warrior races." A Zilani cadet, her crystalline features catching the light from the viewport, added her melodic voice to the conversation. "I heard humans are known for being stubborn, but stubbornness won't help in tactical simulations or physical challenges. The Academy doesn't offer participation awards." Maya finally turned her attention to the group, her dark eyes meeting each of theirs in turn. "You're right," she said quietly, her voice barely audible over the shuttle's engines. "Stubbornness probably won't be enough." The Krillians exchanged amused glances, while the Zilani's crystalline features shifted to what Maya recognized as their equivalent of a patronizing smile. They had no idea they were looking at someone who had spent the last 3 years preparing for this moment, someone whose battle file contained information that would reshape their understanding of what humans were capable of. As the shuttle docked with a solid thunk that reverberated through the hull, Maya gathered her single bag and followed the stream of cadets through the airlock. The Academy's main reception bay was enormous, its ceiling lost in shadows high above. Hundreds of species mingled on the polished floor, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of sounds, lights, and chemical signals that would have overwhelmed most beings. Commander Veltar, a hegemony officer whose species Maya had studied extensively, stood at the center of the bay. His presence commanded immediate attention, not just because of his impressive height, but because of the aura of absolute authority that surrounded him. The hegemony had ruled this sector of space for over 2 millennia, and their military traditions were legendary. "Cadets," Veltar's voice carried easily across the vast space, enhanced by the Academy's audio systems. "You represent the finest your species have to offer. Over the next 4 years, you will be forged into the galaxy's next generation of military leaders. Some of you will excel. Many of you will fail. A few of you will discover capabilities you never knew you possessed." His multifaceted eyes swept across the assembled crowd, pausing briefly on Maya before continuing. "Your first evaluation begins now. You have 1 standard hour to locate your assigned quarters, review your class schedules, and report to Training Base 7 for initial assessment. Your performance over the next 72 hours will determine your placement within the Academy's hierarchy." As the crowd began to disperse, Maya noticed that many of the other cadets were already forming groups based on species or regional alliances. The Krillians stayed together, their heavy footsteps echoing as they moved toward the lift banks. The Zilani clustered in groups of 3 or 4, their crystalline bodies creating small light shows as they communicated in their visual language. Maya walked alone. Her assigned quarters were on level 47, in a section designated for special consideration cadets. She found the designation mildly amusing. The Academy's bureaucracy had clearly struggled with how to classify a human, eventually settling on housing her with other species that didn't fit neatly into their established categories. The quarters were small but functional, with a sleeping alcove, a study area, and a personal hygiene facility that had been modified to accommodate human physiology. Maya spent exactly 12 minutes reviewing her accommodations before settling down to examine her class schedule and the Academy's training protocols. Mathematical strategic analysis, tactical planning, xenobiology, military history, physical conditioning, simulated combat operations, and advanced weapon systems. The curriculum was designed to push cadets to their absolute limits and beyond. Maya had expected as much. What she hadn't expected was a note attached to her personal file, visible only when she accessed her Academy account. Cadet Chun, Maya, human. Species classification, unknown combat potential. Recommend standard evaluation protocols with option for accelerated placement, pending initial assessment results. Note: human military history suggests possible latent capabilities not immediately apparent in preliminary testing. Someone at the Academy had done their homework on human warfare, but Maya suspected they had only scratched the surface. Training Bay 7 was a massive facility designed to accommodate multiple species simultaneously. Anti-gravity field allowed flying species to maneuver freely, while magnetic boots kept others anchored to designated surfaces. Environmental controls maintained different atmospheric conditions in various sections, allowing each species to perform at their optimal level. Maya arrived early and spent the time observing her fellow cadets as they filtered in. The Krillians, Thaxmore, and his companion Caithval took position near the heavy equipment section. Their species had evolved on a high-gravity world, making them naturally stronger than most other beings. The Zilani group positioned themselves near the electronic warfare stations, their crystalline biology allowing them to interface directly with computer systems. A pack of Fenrir, wolf-like beings from the Outer Rim worlds, claimed territory near the obstacle courses. Their enhanced senses and pack-hunting instincts made them formidable opponents in any combat scenario. Several Aquarian cadets moved gracefully toward the fluid dynamics section, their ability to manipulate water-based environments giving them unique tactical advantages. Commander Veltar entered the bay flanked by 3 other instructors, each representing different aspects of Academy training. Your initial assessment will consist of 4 phases, he announced. Physical capability, strategic reasoning, adaptive problem solving, and combat simulation. You will be ranked against your peers in each category, and those rankings will determine your initial class placements. He gestured toward a series of stations arranged throughout the bay. You have 4 hours to complete all assessments. Begin when ready, and remember that everything you do here becomes part of your permanent Academy record. Maya watched as most of the other cadets immediately rushed toward the stations they felt would best showcase their species' natural advantages. The Krillians headed for strength-based challenges, the Zilani toward electronic systems, the Fenrir toward tracking and pursuit scenarios. She walked calmly to the strategic reasoning station. The test presented a complex scenario involving a multi-species fleet attempting to break through a heavily fortified defensive position. Traditional approaches would result in massive casualties, and the simulation's parameters seemed designed to force commanders into choosing between bad and worse options. Maya studied the display for several minutes, noting not just the obvious tactical elements, but also the environmental factors, supply lines, communication delays, and the political implications of various approaches. She began inputting commands, not for a direct assault or even a flanking maneuver, but for something else entirely. The proctor, a hegemony officer named Instructor Calthek, watched with growing confusion as Maya's forces seemed to withdraw from the engagement entirely. "Cadet, you appear to be retreating from the objective." "No, sir," Maya replied without looking up from the display. "I'm changing the rules of engagement." What Maya had recognized was that the scenario was based on a famous historical battle, one she had studied extensively during her preparation. However, the simulation's designers had made the same mistake as the original commanders by focusing entirely on the immediate tactical situation while ignoring broader strategic possibilities. Instead of attacking the defensive position, Maya's forces began systematically destroying infrastructure in the surrounding systems. Supply depots, communication relays, manufacturing facilities, and civilian shipping lanes all became targets. Within the simulation's accelerated time frame, the supposedly impregnable defensive position found itself cut off from all support, its defenders forced to choose between abandoning their posts or slowly starving in place. Innovative approach, Calthek admitted grudgingly. However, your strategy would result in significant civilian casualties. "Yes, sir," Maya acknowledged. "In a real conflict, I would need to weigh those costs against the potential casualties from a direct assault." The simulation parameters indicated this was a critical strategic objective that needed to be taken regardless of cost. "I chose the approach that would accomplish the mission with the lowest military casualties." Calthek made notes on his datapad, his expression unreadable. Maya had clearly passed this portion of the assessment, but she suspected her approach had raised questions about human military philosophy that would require further evaluation. The physical capability tests proved more challenging, though not in the ways Maya had expected. The Academy's equipment was designed to accommodate a wide range of species, but the standards were based on each species' known physical limitations. For humans, those limitations were apparently quite low. Maya approached the strength assessment station where several other cadets were already demonstrating their capabilities. Kaithval, the Krillian, was currently bench pressing what appeared to be roughly 2 tons of weight with all 4 arms, his exoskeleton barely showing strain. The assembled crowd was appropriately impressed. "Next," called the proctor, and Maya stepped forward. The machine adjusted automatically as she approached, sensors analyzing her physiology and setting appropriate parameters. The weight dropped to what Maya estimated was roughly 200 pounds, causing several of the watching cadets to exchange amused glances. "Don't hurt yourself, little human," Thaxmore called out, his voice carrying what passed for good-natured teasing among his kind. Maya positioned herself under the bar and began her assessment. The weight felt manageable, well within her capabilities, but she was curious about something. "Instructor, what are the parameters for exceeding expected performance levels?" The proctor, a multi-armed being whose species Maya didn't immediately recognize, consulted his datapad. "The system adjusts automatically. If you exceed 120% of your species' documented capabilities, it will increase resistance accordingly." "Documented capabilities," Maya repeated thoughtfully, then began pressing the weight. The machine registered her initial repetitions and immediately began adding resistance. Maya continued, her breathing steady and controlled, as the weight climbed past what the system considered the human maximum. At 150% of documented human strength, the machine paused its adjustments, apparently uncertain how to proceed. Maya kept pressing. The watching crowd had grown quiet now, their attention focused on the small human who was somehow bench pressing nearly twice what their databases indicated should be possible for her species. At 200% of documented human capacity, the machine began flashing warnings, indicating that its calculations might be in error. Maya finally stopped, not because she had reached her limit, but because she had made her point. As she sat up, she noticed that every instructor in the vicinity was staring at her, their expressions ranging from confusion to intense interest. "Interesting," the proctor muttered, making extensive notes. "We may need to recalibrate our human performance parameters." The adaptive problem-solving assessment required cadets to work through a series of increasingly complex challenges using limited resources and constantly changing parameters. Maya found herself grouped with 5 other cadets from different species, each bringing their unique perspectives to the problems presented. The first scenario involved establishing a communication network across a system where traditional methods were being jammed by an unknown enemy. The Zalani cadet, whose name was Silandra, immediately began working on electronic countermeasures, her crystalline fingers dancing over the control interfaces. The Krillians focused on brute force solutions, attempting to overpower the jamming with raw signal strength. Maya studied the problem from a different angle. "What if we're approaching this backwards?" she suggested quietly. The Fenrir cadet, a female named Hunt with Stars, tilted her head. "Explain." "We're trying to send messages despite the jamming," Maya said. "But the jamming itself is a form of communication. If we can analyze its patterns, we might be able to use the enemy's own jamming network to carry our signals." It took the group several minutes to understand what Maya was proposing, but once they grasped the concept, they were able to implement it with remarkable efficiency. Instead of fighting the jamming, they modulated their communications to piggyback on the interference patterns, effectively turning the enemy's countermeasures into their own communication network. The second scenario was even more complex, involving resource allocation for a colony under siege. Traditional approaches focused on rationing supplies and establishing defensive perimeters, but Maya again suggested an unconventional approach. "What if we make the siege work in our favor?" she asked. "The enemy is expending resources to maintain their blockade. If we can make the siege more expensive for them than it is for us, they'll eventually be forced to withdraw or change tactics." She outlined a strategy involving controlled information leaks, false supply runs, and psychological warfare designed to make the besieging force believe the colony was better supplied and defended than it actually was. The plan required careful coordination and significant risk, but the simulation indicated it would likely succeed with minimal casualties. By the time they completed the problem-solving assessment, Maya noticed that her fellow group members were looking at her with something approaching respect rather than the amused tolerance they had shown initially. The final assessment phase was individual combat simulation, designed to test each cadet's ability to handle direct confrontation scenarios. Maya watched as other cadets demonstrated their species' natural combat capabilities. The Krillians were devastating in close quarters, their 4 arms and natural armor making them nearly unstoppable in melee combat. The Fenrir showed pack tactics and incredible speed, while the Zalani proved surprisingly effective at electronic warfare and battlefield manipulation. When Maya's turn came, she found herself facing a holographic opponent designed to match her species' documented combat capabilities. The simulation began with what appeared to be a straightforward tactical engagement, her forces against an equal number of enemy units. Maya immediately recognized the scenario's limitations. Like the earlier strategic test, it was based on conventional assumptions about how humans fought. She decided to demonstrate why those assumptions might need revision. Instead of engaging the enemy directly, Maya's forces began what appeared to be a fighting retreat, drawing the enemy into increasingly disadvantageous positions. But this wasn't a simple tactical withdrawal. Maya was implementing something she had learned from human military history that apparently hadn't made it into the Academy's databases: asymmetric warfare principles. Her forces struck supply lines, eliminated isolated units, and gradually degraded the enemy's capability to maintain cohesive operations. When direct confrontation became inevitable, Maya's remaining units had significant advantages in terms of positioning, supplies, and intelligence about enemy movements. The simulation ended with Maya's forces achieving total victory despite being outnumbered and technically outgunned at the start of the engagement. The combat proctor, Commander Veltar himself, studied the results with obvious interest. "Cadet Chun," he said formally, "your approach to combat simulation shows unusual creativity. Where did you learn these tactics?" "Human military history, sir," Maya replied. "We've had considerable experience with asymmetric warfare throughout our development." Veltar made notes on his personal datapad, and Maya caught a glimpse of text that made her suppress a smile. Recommend immediate advanced tactical assessment. Human combat doctrines may represent significant intelligence gap in current academy training protocols. As the assessment period concluded, Maya gathered her gear and prepared to return to her quarters. Around her, other cadets were discussing their performance, some confident, others concerned about their results. The general consensus seemed to be that the assessments had been challenging but fair, designed to identify each species' strengths and areas for development. Maya suspected that her own results might generate more questions than answers. The Academy's instructors had clearly expected her to perform within established parameters for human capabilities, but those parameters were based on limited data and possibly incorrect assumptions about what humans were capable of when properly motivated and trained. As she walked through the Academy's corridors toward the lift banks, Maya reflected on the day's events. The other cadets' initial dismissal of her capabilities hadn't been malicious, just based on the information they had available. Soon, they would have access to new information. Her battle file, when it was finally opened and reviewed, would reveal that the small, fragile-looking human they had underestimated was actually a graduate of Earth's most advanced military training programs. She had completed courses that most humans couldn't even qualify for, mastered combat techniques developed through centuries of human conflict, and demonstrated strategic thinking that drew from the entire span of her species' military evolution. But more than that, Maya's file would reveal something the Academy's instructors were only beginning to understand. Humans weren't just another species that had achieved spaceflight and sought to join the galactic community. They were a species that had developed in an environment of constant conflict, where survival required not just physical capability, but adaptability, creativity, and a willingness to completely rewrite the rules of engagement when circumstances demanded it. The Galactic Military Academy prided itself on training the finest military minds in known space. Maya suspected that over the next few days, both the Academy and her fellow cadets were going to discover what finest military mind looked like when it came from species that had learned warfare not as a profession, but as a condition of existence. As the lift carried her toward level 47, Maya allowed herself a small smile. The assessments had gone well, but they were just the beginning. Soon, everyone at the Academy would understand that underestimating humans was a mistake they could only afford to make once. The Academy's administrative offices occupied the entire 31st level of Station Omega 7, their polished corridors reflecting the morning shift change as instructors and support staff began another day. In Conference Room Alpha 7, 5 of the Academy's senior staff members sat around an oval table that seemed to shimmer with its own internal light, reviewing assessment results that had prompted this emergency meeting. Commander Veltar spread holographic displays across the table surface, each showing different aspects of the previous day's cadet evaluations. In my 23 years at this academy, he began, his multifaceted eyes scanning the assembled officers, I have never seen results that required us to question our fundamental understanding of a species' capabilities. Instructor Calthek, who had proctored the strategic reasoning assessment, leaned forward. The humans' tactical solutions were not just unconventional. They demonstrated a level of strategic thinking that suggests her species has military experience far beyond what our databases indicate. Define far beyond, requested Dr. Zinthara, the Academy's head of xenobiology. Her Aquarian physiology allowed her to process multiple data streams simultaneously, and she was currently analyzing biorhythm readings from Maya's assessments. Calthek manipulated the holographic display, highlighting specific tactical maneuvers from Maya's simulations. Standard Academy doctrine emphasizes force multiplication, technological advantage, and traditional military hierarchies. The human consistently chose approaches that violated these principles while achieving superior results. She treated warfare as a problem to be solved rather than a contest to be won, added training coordinator Yexhan, his insectoid features clicking thoughtfully. When we presented scenarios designed to test decision-making under pressure, she demonstrated stress responses consistent with someone who has extensive real combat experience. Commander Veltar nodded grimly. Which brings us to the central problem. According to galactic intelligence files, humans have been spacefaring for less than 50 standard years. Their homeworld showed no signs of large-scale military technology until recently. Yet this cadet displays tactical knowledge that rivals our most experienced officers. Dr. Zinthera's tentacles swept across her datapad as she accessed genetic analysis results. There's another anomaly. The human's physical performance exceeded documented species parameters by margins that suggest our baseline data is fundamentally incorrect. How incorrect? Veltar asked. Bench pressing capacity, 187% of documented human maximum. Endurance trials, 156% of expected performance. Reaction time testing, 203% of recorded human averages. Either this individual represents a significant evolutionary deviation from her species' norm, or our understanding of human physical capabilities is based on inadequate data. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. The Galactic Alliance's entire approach to integrating new species was based on comprehensive biological and sociological assessments. If their data on humans was this dramatically flawed, it raised questions about what other critical information they might be missing. Instructor Calthek activated another display. I recommend we review the human's personal file more carefully. Perhaps there are details that weren't initially flagged as significant. The holographic display populated with Maya's complete Academy application, including sections that were normally considered routine administrative information. Her educational background showed completion of something called the Advanced Strategic Studies Program, an institution named West Point Military Academy. Cross-reference that institution with available human cultural databases, Veltar ordered. The search results that appeared caused Dr. Zinthera's tentacles to freeze mid-motion. West Point was identified as Earth's premier military training facility, with a history stretching back over 3 centuries. Its graduates had included some of humanity's most significant military leaders, and its curriculum covered everything from battlefield tactics to nuclear strategy. She's not just a random human who happened to qualify for the academy, Yexhan realized. She's already a trained military officer from her species' elite educational institutions. Veltar's expression grew increasingly serious as he reviewed additional file information. Maya's academic transcripts showed courses in subjects the Academy staff had never heard of: asymmetric warfare theory, psychological operations, counterinsurgency strategy, and something ominously titled Total War Doctrine. There's more, Dar, Zinthera announced, her analysis of Maya's biological data revealing new anomalies. Her stress hormone patterns during assessment indicate someone who has been in actual life-threatening situations multiple times. These aren't simulation responses. They're consistent with real combat experience. Commander Veltar stood and walked to the conference room's viewport, staring out at the Academy's training facilities where hundreds of cadets were beginning their morning routines. Summon Cadet Chun to my office immediately. I believe we need to have a very different conversation about humanity's military capabilities. Meanwhile, Maya was discovering that her assessment results had generated considerable attention among her fellow cadets. The Academy's ranking system was designed to be transparent, allowing cadets to understand their relative positions and identify areas for improvement. What Maya hadn't anticipated was how dramatically her scores would stand out from established species performance patterns. She first realized something had changed when she entered the Academy's main dining facility for the morning meal. Conversations gradually diminished as she passed various tables, replaced by the kind of careful observation that indicated she had become a topic of intense discussion. Silandra, the Zalani cadet from her problem-solving group, approached with 3 other cadets Maya recognized from the previous day's assessments. May we join you? Cylandra asked, her crystalline features flickering with patterns Maya was learning to interpret as curiosity. Of course, Maya replied, gesturing to the empty chairs around her table. Hunt with Stars, the Fenrir cadet, settled into a chair modified for her species' physiology. We've been reviewing the preliminary rankings, she said without preamble. Your scores are generating significant discussion among the student body. Maya looked up from her meal, noting the careful way her table mates were phrasing their statements. Discussion about what, specifically? Thaxmore approached from the Krillian section of the dining hall, his massive frame casting shadows over their table. Unlike his earlier dismissive attitude, his posture now suggested wariness rather than amusement. Human, he said formally, we may have misjudged your species' capabilities. It's possible, Maya agreed neutrally. What brought you to that conclusion? Your strategic reasoning scores are the highest recorded in Academy history, Cylandra explained. Your tactical simulation results exceeded the performance of cadets from species known for their military prowess. Most significantly, your problem-solving approaches demonstrated knowledge of warfare principles that don't appear in any of our standard databases. Maya took a careful bite of her meal, considering how much information to share. Humans have had extensive experience with military conflict throughout our development. Perhaps that experience provided insights that translate well to Academy assessments. Hunt with Stars leaned forward, her enhanced senses detecting subtleties in Maya's speech patterns. Extensive experience with conflict suggests your species has faced significant external threats. What manner of enemies required humans to develop such advanced tactical knowledge? Each other, Maya replied simply. The silence that followed was profound. In galactic civilization, interspecies conflict was rare and heavily regulated by the Alliance. Most species achieve spaceflight through cooperation and resource sharing. The concept of a species developing advanced military technology primarily to fight members of their own kind was deeply disturbing to most Alliance races. Thaxmore's forearms shifted uneasily. You mean humans fought against other humans? As military equals rather than putting down primitive uprisings. For most of our recorded history, Maya confirmed, we've fought over territory, resources, ideology, religion, and sometimes simply because diplomatic solutions seemed impossible. By the time we achieved spaceflight, we had several thousand years of accumulated military knowledge derived from conflicts involving progressively more sophisticated weapons and tactics. The implications of this revelation rippled through the group. Most Alliance species had developed their military capabilities in response to external threats like natural disasters, wildlife, or occasionally hostile alien contact. The idea of a species that had essentially been training for warfare against technologically equivalent opponents for millennia was unprecedented in their experience. That would explain your tactical innovations, Cylandra mused. You've been exposed to military thinking that assumes your enemies are as intelligent and adaptable as you are. Maya nodded. Human military doctrine is built around the assumption that your opponent will learn from their mistakes, adapt to your strategies, and actively work to counter your advantages. It tends to produce approaches that prioritize flexibility over predictability. Before the conversation could continue, Maya's personal communicator chimed with an urgent message. She read the text quickly, her expression remaining neutral despite the message's significance. I need to go, she announced, standing and gathering her belongings. I've been called to Commander Veltar's office. As Maya left the dining hall, she was aware of dozens of conversations resuming behind her, undoubtedly focused on the revelations she had just shared. The Academy's social dynamics were about to become considerably more complex. Commander Veltar's office occupied a corner position that provided spectacular views of both the Academy's training facilities and the vast starfield beyond. Maya arrived precisely on time, her bearing and demeanor reflecting the military discipline that had been drilled into her years before she ever left Earth. Cadet Chun, reporting as ordered, sir, she announced, standing at attention in front of Veltar's desk. Veltar studied her for several long moments before gesturing to a chair. Sit, please. This conversation will be easier if we approach it as a discussion rather than a formal interview. Maya settled into the indicated chair, maintaining proper posture while allowing her expression to relax slightly. Yes, sir. We've been reviewing your assessment results in detail. Veltar began, activating a holographic display that showed various performance metrics. Your scores indicate capabilities that exceed our documented parameters for human physiology and tactical knowledge. Before we proceed with your academy placement, I need to understand whether you represent typical human military training or if you're an exceptional individual among your species. Maya had been expecting this question since her assessment results were posted. Sir, I would characterize my training as advanced, but not unique among human military personnel. Earth maintains several institutions similar to your academy, and graduates from those programs typically demonstrate comparable capabilities. Veltar leaned forward. Are you suggesting that your homeworld produces military officers with tactical knowledge equivalent to what you demonstrated yesterday on a regular basis? Yes, sir. Additionally, human military doctrine emphasizes continuous education and adaptation. Active military personnel regularly participate in advanced training programs, simulation exercises, and strategic planning sessions designed to refine their capabilities throughout their careers. The holographic display shifted to show Maya's educational background. Your academic transcripts reference courses and subjects that don't correspond to anything in our databases. Can you explain what total war doctrine encompasses? Maya considered her response carefully. Total war was a concept that most Alliance species would find deeply disturbing, but Commander Veltar clearly needed to understand the scope of human military thinking. Total war doctrine addresses conflicts where the complete destruction of an enemy's ability to continue fighting becomes the primary objective, she explained. It encompasses strategies for targeting not just military forces, but also industrial capacity, infrastructure, civilian morale, and economic systems. The goal is to make continued resistance impossible rather than simply defeating enemy forces in the field. Veltar's multifaceted eyes fixed on Maya with an intensity that suggested he was reassessing everything he thought he knew about human civilization. And this is standard curriculum at human military institutions. It's one of several strategic approaches we study, Maya confirmed. Human military education covers the full spectrum of potential conflict scenarios, from limited engagements with specific objectives to conflicts involving the complete mobilization of entire civilizations. The commander stood and walked to his viewport, staring out at the Academy's peaceful training grounds. Cadet Shun, I must ask you directly. Does humanity view membership in the Galactic Alliance as a military opportunity? Are you here to gather intelligence about Alliance defensive capabilities? Maya had known this question would eventually arise. Earth's government had prepared responses to address exactly this concern. No, sir. Humanity seeks Alliance membership because we recognize that our survival and development will be significantly enhanced through cooperation with other species. We've learned from our own history that conflict should be a last resort when all other options have been exhausted. But you maintain military capabilities that could pose a significant threat to Alliance security, Veltar observed. Sir, we maintain military capabilities because our history has taught us that being unprepared for conflict can result in the destruction of everything we've worked to build. However, we have no interest in aggressive action against Alliance members. We seek to contribute to collective security rather than threaten it. Veltar returned to his desk and made several notes on his personal datapad. Cadet Shun, your presence at this academy has revealed significant gaps in our understanding of human civilization. With your permission, I would like to arrange for you to participate in a series of educational sessions where you can help our instructors better understand human military doctrine and capabilities. I will be honored to assist, sir, Maya replied. Additionally, your assessment scores qualify you for immediate placement in advanced tactical studies, normally reserved for final year cadets. However, I'm concerned that standard academy training may not provide you with appropriate challenges given your existing knowledge base. Maya had hoped for advanced placement, but recognized the diplomatic complexity of the situation. Sir, I believe I could benefit significantly from academy training regardless of my current knowledge level. Human military doctrine has developed in isolation from galactic strategic thinking. Exposure to alliance tactical approaches and multi-species cooperation protocols would enhance my capabilities considerably. Veltar nodded approvingly. An excellent perspective. Very well, you'll be placed in advanced courses while also participating in our instructor education program. Your schedule will be modified accordingly. Thank you, sir. One final question, Cadet Shun. Your personal file indicates you volunteered for academy admission rather than being assigned by your government. Why did you personally choose to come here? Maya had been asked this question during her application interviews, but Commander Veltar's version carried additional weight given everything they had discussed. Sir, I believe that humanity's future depends on our ability to work effectively with other species. Military cooperation is one of the most challenging forms of interspecies collaboration because it requires absolute trust and mutual understanding. If humans can prove ourselves capable of contributing to Alliance military goals while respecting Alliance values, we'll have demonstrated that we can be reliable partners in all aspects of galactic civilization. And if you cannot prove that, Maya met Veltar's gaze directly, then humanity will remain isolated, and both we and the Alliance will be weaker for it. I don't consider that an acceptable outcome. Commander Veltar studied her for several more moments before nodding. Dismissed, Cadet. Report to Advanced Tactical Studies at 0800 tomorrow. And Cadet. Yes, sir. I suspect your time at this academy will be educational for all of us. As Maya left Commander Veltar's office, she reflected on how dramatically the situation had evolved since her arrival less than 48 hours earlier. The Academy's staff now understood that humanity represented something unprecedented in their experience, a species that had achieved spaceflight while maintaining military capabilities developed through centuries of sophisticated warfare against technologically equivalent opponents. The question now was whether the Academy could adapt its training programs to accommodate a student whose existing knowledge challenged their fundamental assumptions about military education. More importantly, Maya needed to prove that human military capabilities could enhance Alliance security rather than threaten it. Walking through the Academy's corridors toward her next class, Maya noticed that her fellow cadets' attitudes toward her had shifted significantly. The dismissive amusement was gone, replaced by a mixture of respect and wariness that suggested word of her morning meeting with Commander Veltar had already spread through the student body. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as she joined classes designed for the Academy's most advanced students. But Maya was confident that her preparation had been adequate. Earth's military institutions had spent 3 years preparing her for exactly this situation, and she had no intention of disappointing either her home planet or her new Academy colleagues. The small, fragile-looking human who had arrived at the Academy just 2 days earlier was about to begin demonstrating why underestimating humanity was a mistake the galaxy could only afford to make once. 6 months had passed since Maya's arrival at the Galactic Military Academy, and the changes her presence had generated were becoming apparent throughout the institution. What had begun as a simple admission of an unknown species had evolved into a fundamental reassessment of Alliance military doctrine and training protocols. The morning briefing in the Academy's primary conference chamber brought together representatives from every major Alliance military command. Admiral Korathval, Supreme Commander of Alliance Defense Forces, stood before a holographic display that showed tactical simulations unlike anything previously developed by Alliance strategists. The integration of human military doctrine into Academy training has produced results that exceed our most optimistic projections, the Admiral announced to the assembled officers. Cadet performance across all species has improved by an average of 43% since implementation of hybrid training protocols. Colonel Vex Thor, representing the Hegemony Command Council, leaned forward. Admiral, While the performance improvements are impressive, we must address the broader implications. The human cadet has demonstrated capabilities that suggest her species poses potential security risks to Alliance operations. Admiral Korithval activated a detailed analysis of Maya's impact on Academy training. Colonel, I believe your concerns stem from a misunderstanding of what we've observed. The human hasn't demonstrated superior individual capabilities. She's demonstrated superior strategic thinking methodology. Dr. Zinthara, now serving as the Academy's head of interspecies military studies, added her analysis. Our detailed assessment indicates that human military development followed a unique evolutionary path. Most Alliance species developed military capabilities in response to external threats, leading to doctrines focused on defense and resource protection. Humans developed their military capabilities primarily through conflict with other humans, resulting in doctrines focused on adaptation, innovation, and psychological warfare. The holographic display shifted to show comparative tactical analyses. When facing scenarios designed around traditional Alliance military thinking, human approaches consistently identify alternative solutions that achieve superior results with lower resource expenditure. This isn't because humans are inherently superior combatants, but because their strategic thinking has been shaped by different fundamental assumptions about warfare. Admiral Korethval nodded. Which brings us to today's primary agenda item. Cadet Chen's battle file has been declassified at her request, and the contents provide context for her Academy performance that I believe will address security concerns while demonstrating why human Alliance membership would benefit all member species. The conference chamber's main display activated, showing a document header that read, Classified, Combat Service Record, Lieutenant Maya Chun, United Earth Defense Forces, Special Operations Division. The security classifications and authentication codes indicated this was an official military record from Earth government. Before reviewing the contents, Admiral Korithval cautioned, I want to emphasize that what you're about to see represents standard human military experience rather than exceptional individual capability. Lieutenant Shin volunteered for Academy admission after completing a normal career progression within Earth's military structure. The first section of Maya's battle file contained her basic training records from West Point, showing academic performance that would have been impressive at any Alliance institution. However, the subsequent sections revealed experiences that redefined the assembled officer's understanding of human military operations. Combat deployments to 6 different planetary systems. Leadership roles in counterinsurgency operations. Strategic planning for multi-theater campaigns. Coordination of Alliance forces during what Earth classified as intercolonial conflicts. Each entry in Maya's record described military operations on a scale and complexity that most Alliance species had never experienced. Colonel Vex Thor studied the deployment records with growing amazement. Admiral, these documents suggest that humans have been conducting military operations across multiple star systems for decades. Our intelligence indicated they had only achieved interstellar travel recently. Earth's government has been selective about the information they've shared during Alliance membership negotiations, Admiral Korithval acknowledged. However, they've now provided complete disclosure about their military capabilities in recognition of the fact that meaningful cooperation requires honest communication. Dr. Zinthara highlighted specific sections of Maya's record. Lieutenant Chen's service history includes operations that demonstrate human military capabilities we hadn't previously suspected. Long-range reconnaissance, deep space naval engagements, planetary assault coordination, and what they term asymmetric warfare against technologically superior opponents. The battle file contained detailed after-action reports from engagements that showcased human tactical thinking. In one operation, Maya had led a force of 30 human soldiers in successfully defeating an enemy force of over 300. The key had been recognizing that the enemy's superior numbers became a disadvantage when concentrated in defensible positions that could be bypassed rather than assaulted directly. Another operation showed Maya coordinating orbital bombardment with ground forces to eliminate enemy infrastructure while minimizing civilian casualties. The precision required for such operations indicated human military technology and training far exceeded Alliance intelligence estimates. These records raise an important question, Colonel Vexthor observed. If humans possess this level of military capability, why do they seek Alliance membership rather than pursuing independent expansion? Admiral Korithval activated another section of Maya's file, showing her final assignment before Academy admission. Lieutenant Shun served as a strategic analyst for Earth's Department of Alien Relations. Her assignment was to assess Alliance military capabilities and recommend approaches for human integration that would benefit both humanity and existing Alliance members. The strategic analysis Maya had prepared for Earth's government was both comprehensive and remarkably accurate. She had identified Alliance military strengths and weaknesses, predicted how human tactical approaches might complement existing Alliance doctrines, and outlined integration strategies that would minimize cultural conflicts while maximizing operational effectiveness. Her recommendation, Admiral Korithval continued, was that Earth should pursue full Alliance membership and offer complete transparency about human military capabilities. Her analysis concluded that mutual cooperation would produce benefits exceeding what either humanity or the Alliance could achieve independently. Dr. Zinthera accessed Maya's psychological evaluation records, showing stress response patterns and decision-making profiles that painted a picture of someone who had faced genuine life-or-death situations repeatedly and emerged stronger rather than traumatized. The human's mental resilience indicators suggest her species may be naturally adapted for high-stress combat operations. However, her psychological profile also shows strong ethical constraints and commitment to protecting non-combatants. The assembled officers spent considerable time reviewing tactical innovations Maya had developed during her service career. Her approaches to urban warfare, space-based combat, and multi-species coordination showed a level of strategic thinking that incorporated variables most Alliance military planners had never considered. The question we must answer, Admiral Korithval stated, is whether we can effectively integrate human military knowledge into Alliance operations while maintaining our existing command structures and operational protocols. Colonel Vexthor reviewed the Academy's training modifications that had been implemented based on Maya's input. The hybrid training protocols show promising results, but they also represent fundamental changes to military education that has remained stable for over 2 centuries. Change isn't necessarily negative, Dr. Zinthera pointed out. Our analysis indicates that Alliance military thinking had become somewhat predictable precisely because our training emphasized consistency over adaptation. Human strategic approaches force us to consider variables and possibilities we had been overlooking. The conference chamber's display shifted to show Maya's most recent Academy performance evaluations. After 6 months of advanced training, she had not only maintained her exceptional performance, but had begun developing new tactical approaches that combined human strategic thinking with Alliance technology and multi-species coordination. Her latest simulation results, Admiral Korithval noted, show her implementing strategies that utilize the unique capabilities of each Alliance species in ways none of us had previously considered. She's not imposing human tactical thinking on Alliance operations. She's synthesizing human and Alliance approaches to create something more effective than either could achieve alone. The most impressive example involved a complex scenario requiring coordination between 12 different species with vastly different capabilities and communication methods. Traditional Alliance doctrine would have assigned each species roles based on their primary strengths, while minimizing interaction complexity. Maya's approach created integrated mixed-species units that leveraged the unique advantages each species could provide to their teammates. The results were dramatic. Mixed-species units under Maya's tactical framework achieved mission success rates nearly double those of traditional single-species units, while showing significantly improved casualty ratios and resource efficiency. These results suggest, Dr. Zinthera concluded that human integration into Alliance military operations could revolutionize our defensive capabilities. Admiral Korithval nodded, which brings us to our decision point. Earth's government has formally requested that we establish a joint military training program where human instructors would work alongside Academy staff to develop integrated tactical doctrines. They've offered to provide complete access to human military knowledge in exchange for Alliance advanced technology sharing. Colonel Vexthor considered the implications. Such cooperation would require unprecedented trust between Earth and Alliance Command. We would be sharing military secrets that could theoretically be used against us if human intentions prove hostile. The same risk exists from their perspective, Admiral Korithval pointed out. They're offering to share military knowledge that has been developed over centuries of warfare. The level of trust required is mutual. The discussion continued for several hours as the assembled officers worked through the practical challenges of implementing joint human alliance military cooperation. Questions arose about command authority, operational security, cultural integration, and technology compatibility. Eventually, Admiral Korithval called for a formal decision. All officers in favor of approving the Joint Military Training Program proposal. The vote was unanimous. As the conference concluded, Admiral Korithval issued final instructions. Dr. Zinthera, you'll coordinate with Earth's government to establish the joint program framework. Colonel Vexthor, I want you to personally oversee the security protocols for technology sharing. Commander Veltar, continue monitoring Cadet Chen's progress and prepare recommendations for her post-graduation assignment. 3 days later, Maya stood in the Academy's main briefing theater facing an audience that included not only her fellow cadets, but also senior staff from every major Alliance military command. The formal ceremony to announce the joint training program had been scheduled as a celebration of successful interspecies cooperation, but Maya understood the deeper significance. 6 months ago, Commander Veltar announced to the assembled audience, this Academy welcomed its first human cadet. Today, we're announcing a partnership that will reshape Alliance military training for generations to come. Maya had been asked to address the gathering about her experience at the Academy and her perspectives on human Alliance military cooperation. As she approached the podium, she reflected on how dramatically things had changed since her arrival. When I first arrived at the Academy, Maya began, many of my fellow cadets questioned whether humans possessed the capabilities necessary to contribute meaningfully to Alliance military operations. Their skepticism was understandable given the limited information available about human military development. She gestured toward her classmates, many of whom had become close friends and training partners. Over the past 6 months, I've had the privilege of learning alongside representatives from dozens of species, each bringing unique perspectives and capabilities to our shared training. What I've discovered is that effective military cooperation isn't about demonstrating superiority over other species. It's about finding ways to combine our different strengths to achieve goals none of us could accomplish alone. The audience listened attentively as Maya described specific examples of successful multi-species cooperation during advanced training scenarios. Her presentation emphasized how human tactical approaches had been enhanced through integration with Alliance strategic thinking rather than replacing it. The joint training program we're announcing today, Maya continued, represents an opportunity for humans and Alliance species to learn from each other in ways that will benefit everyone involved. Humans bring strategic thinking shaped by extensive combat experience, but we also bring perspectives limited by our isolated development. Alliance species offer technological capabilities and cooperative frameworks that humans are only beginning to understand. Admiral Korithval stepped forward as Maya concluded her remarks. Lieutenant Chen's Academy performance has demonstrated that successful interspecies military cooperation requires mutual respect, open communication, and willingness to adapt traditional approaches when circumstances demand innovation. The promotion announcement surprised Maya, though she realized it shouldn't have. Her academy performance had exceeded all expectations, and her contributions to military training development qualified her for advanced rank recognition. Lieutenant Shun will serve as the Human Liaison Officer for Joint Program Development. Admiral Korithval continued. She'll work directly with Alliance Command to ensure that human military knowledge is effectively integrated into existing training protocols while respecting Alliance operational values. As the ceremony concluded and the audience dispersed, Maya found herself surrounded by classmates and instructors offering congratulations and expressing enthusiasm for the joint program. The Krillian cadets who had initially dismissed her as too fragile to survive academy training were among her strongest supporters. Lieutenant Thaxmore approached with formal military bearing. It has been an honor to train alongside you. I believe our species will benefit greatly from learning human tactical approaches. Silandra, the Zalani cadet who had become one of Maya's closest friends, flickered with patterns indicating deep satisfaction. Your battle file revelations helped us understand that military strength isn't just about individual capability. It's about strategic thinking and adaptability. Hunt with Stars, representing the Fenrir delegation, added, human tactical doctrine has taught us that the most dangerous opponent isn't necessarily the strongest or fastest, but the one who can adapt most quickly to changing circumstances. As Maya gathered her personal belongings from the academy quarters that had been her home for 6 months, she reflected on the unexpected turn her military career had taken. What had begun as a simple exchange assignment had evolved into a diplomatic and military milestone that would influence Alliance operations for generations. Her personal communicator chimed with a message from Earth Defense Command. The contents made her smile. Lieutenant Shun, your academy performance has exceeded all expectations. Earth Command is proud of your contributions to human alliance relations. Prepare for your next assignment. Establishing the joint training facility and serving as the primary human instructor for Alliance tactical education. Additional human military personnel will join you within 3 months to begin full program implementation. The fragile-looking girl who had arrived at the academy 6 months earlier was about to become the bridge between two fundamentally different approaches to warfare. The Alliance was about to discover that when humans said, "Never underestimate us," they weren't making a threat. They were offering an opportunity to become stronger together. As Maya prepared to leave the academy that had been her home, she looked out at the stars visible through her quarters viewport. Somewhere out there, other human officers were preparing to join Alliance operations, bringing with them centuries of military knowledge developed in the crucible of human conflict. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon had never been their individual strength or their advanced technology. It had always been their ability to adapt, to find new solutions when old approaches failed, and to transform potential enemies into powerful allies through demonstrated competence and unwavering reliability. The Academy had taught Maya much about Alliance military doctrine and multi-species cooperation. But, perhaps more importantly, she had taught the Alliance that the universe was full of possibilities they had never imagined, and that the strongest civilizations were those willing to learn from anyone who had knowledge to share. The joint program would face challenges, misunderstandings, and undoubtedly some failures. But Maya was confident it would succeed because it was built on the same principle that had guided human military development for centuries: the recognition that survival and prosperity required constant adaptation, continuous learning, and the courage to embrace change when circumstances demanded it. The small human who had been underestimated by everyone she met had ultimately proven that the most dangerous mistake in any conflict was failing to recognize an ally when they offered their hand in partnership.